Clint Estee with Estee Electric. We work in the dark, so you don't have to. What we're going to talk about this morning is our Federal Pacific panels. These panels were manufactured and highly distributed in the 70s and the 80s, and they've been put in millions of homes across the states. What has started happening is that these particular panels, the way that the one that really got them was a Stab-Lok Federal Pacific panel. They have other panels that are out there that are still doing great, but they are reaching that 30-year mark. Basically, when panels reach between 20 and 30 years, they are outdated because all the new stuff that is created creates a higher draw of electricity. So therefore, when you have panels that are built in this era and operated in this era, then you have a problem of overheating in the panels. So those panels should really be inspected at least once every 2 years to make sure that all of your connections are tight. Make sure that if you have aluminum feeders, that there's a product called NOx on it, which decreases the heat on aluminum conductors and in the lugs, and make sure those lugs are tightened to the proper torque. If there's a loose connection, what happens is it produces heat. And anytime, especially in Texas, where we can have 80-degree weather today and 40-degree weather tomorrow, well, you got heat and cool. So everything expands with heat, contracts in the cold. So therefore, it causes those screws to start slowly backing up and start slowly to make that to where the current is trying to make connection with the lug that it's tied into, but is not able to do so. So if you don't have good connection, when it snaps into that and it's connected all the way around that breaker, then the breaker cannot do what it needs to do. This is the panel that puts Federal Pacific out of business because of fire hazards. And what it is, it's just a little stem of metal, and it goes into a little square hole. So the connection is not that great. The breaker, so the heat is happening on the bus and not internally in the breaker where the throw is. Inside the breaker is a metallic strip that whenever it gets hot, it causes it to move away from where the connection is. So therefore, when it moves away, it causes that breaker to trip. That's why you hear the little click sound. It makes it click because it goes so far that it clicks away and it won't come back on until you turn the breaker all the way off and then back on again. So what that does is, panels are designed to take and absorb arc blast. They're designed that if you have dripping, is designed to help you out there as well, to contain that inside the enclosure. The problem comes into play is that when that enclosure is also blowing itself, because at the points of grounding, where it's connected to your ground rod, those points that are loose lock nuts or whatever over time, which is in the panel inspection, you tighten all your connections. Those places right there will start to blow, and then your actual can will melt. So this is where overcurrent protection really comes into play. If you have a breaker that is not tripping, and it's only in the Federal Pacific panels, that's where you're probably in the problems of that. But there was a deal where they did extensive testing on it, and it said 60 to 80% of the time when they applied an overcurrent, which is supposed to trip the breaker, it did in weird crawl spaces or in the attic. We don't want to have to go down there, or your panel's not labeled, and you don't want to, you can't find the circuit. Now, I need to turn the circuit off because I'm in danger of being electrocuted of where I'm doing my work. I will take the two wires and park them together and trip the breaker. The problem is it won't trip. The breakers will not trip. So if the breakers won't trip when you touch hot and neutral together, guess what? They're not going to trip whenever it happens over.
So, what percentage of these breakers are still on the market versus the newer models?
I would say, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, yes.
And is that mainly older homes?
Well, yeah, I would say yes. 80%, because all the homes that was built between 75 and 85, those years right there, they were flooded, inundated. I mean, there's neighborhoods around my neighborhood, I know for a fact, that they're just inundated with these things, you know. And most of these older homes now are owned by older people. It'll have FPE, Federal Pacific Electric, is what is on the front of them. And if you open it up, inside there'll be a little label in that says Federal Pacific. you know, and the one that is the most dangerous is the Stab-Lok. Federal Pacific has another type that they have that is not a problem with that panel.
See if it's that brand.
It'll say Stab-Lok right, and it's
Probably needs to be changed out.
Yes, yeah, because there again, with our loads today, before,
Wow.
just think of knob and tube. I don't know if you all know what knob and tube is, but a long time ago, in your homes, they had these knobs that they would nail on the wall, and they had this wire, and they would hook it on there, and then it would go down, and then they have a tube that went through the stud, and that's the wire would pass through the tube. Well, they would run one neutral all the way through the whole house with several, 2 or 3 hots. That's all that your whole house was on, was 3 or 4 breakers, max. Now we're filling up 30, 40 amp, 40 space panels in homes because it's required by code to have dedicated circuits in. You know, the kitchen should have at least 6 dedicated circuits in it alone. That exceeds any old panel right off the bat, you know.
Are there any bad panels being manufactured today?
No. That company went out of business. There's a couple other ones that are right there behind them because they're getting old. Bryant is another panel. It's a getting old panel. And Zinsco is another panel that is getting old. But it'll trip. The problem with Zinsco's panels is that they're just not equipped to handle the draw that we're pulling today.